In June 2023, a construction team excavating for a new resort near Bangkok unearthed an unexpected discovery. 4 feet beneath a papaya grove, they found a concrete bunker, its entrance secured by steel plates. Inside, amidst Japanese military maps and a general's dress uniform, was a leather satchel containing $40,000 in 1940s currency. The abandoned villa above had stood vacant for decades, built in 1946, a year after World War II concluded. Local records provided no owner for the property, only a serial number that yielded no matches in Thai archives. However, a cross-reference of the uniform's measurements and insignia with Japanese military databases revealed a hit. Lieutenant General Yashit Sugao. His last confirmed sighting was July 7, 1944, during the final stages of the Battle of Saipan, where he reportedly led one of the war's largest banzai charges before committing ritual suicide in a cave. His remains were never recovered for 79 years. While official history recorded his death on Saipan, the Thai villa told a different tale, exposing evidence that a Japanese general had faked his demise and disappeared for decades. To uncover how he evaded one of the Pacific War's most brutal battles, hit that like button to support bringing more forgotten World War II mysteries to light, and subscribe for future discoveries. Now, let's return to Saipan in 1944, where 30,000 Japanese soldiers faced impending annihilation. Understanding why a general would fake his death requires revisiting the island where he was presumed to have died. Saipan was not merely another island, it was integral Japanese territory, part of the Mariana Islands chain under Japanese control since 1914, located 1,500 miles from Tokyo. Its proximity made it a potential launchpad for American B-29 bombers targeting the Japanese mainland, a fact that underscored its strategic importance for the United States and Japan's resolve to defend it fiercely. Lieutenant General Yashit Sugao assumed command of the 43rd Division on Saipan in February 1944. At 58, he was a seasoned career officer with 3 decades in the Imperial Army, a graduate of the Army War College in 1916, who had served in Manchuria and commanded occupation forces in China. Known as a strict traditionalist adhering to the Bushido Code, he was not one for ostentation or glory-seeking, but his superiors relied on him for critical assignments. Saipan proved to be his most challenging mission yet. Upon arrival, he found 30,000 Japanese troops and 25,000 civilians on an island barely 12 miles long. His orders from Tokyo were unambiguous. Hold Saipan at any cost. There would be no reinforcements, no evacuation. The island boasted 3 airfields and served as the Central Pacific Fleet's headquarters. Its loss would dismantle the strategic defense perimeter protecting the homeland. His chief of staff, Colonel Takuchi Suzuki, later noted in his personal journal that Sugao privately viewed the defense as an unsolvable mathematical problem. The American invasion fleet appeared on June 15, 1944. 800 ships, carrying 127,000 troops, primarily Marines from the 2nd and 4th Divisions. They landed on the southwestern beaches under an intense barrage from battleships that devastated the shoreline. Sugao's defensive strategy was conventional. Fortified caves in interior hills, artillery positioned on high ground, a prolonged attrition approach designed to exact a heavy toll from the Americans. For 3 weeks, it performed beyond expectations. His troops engaged from caves and tunnels, launched night counterattacks, and retreated to new positions when overwhelmed. Yet, the odds remained stacked against them. For every American casualty, Japan lost 10 men. By early July, Sugao's forces were confined to the island's northern tip, devoid of food, with dwindling ammunition, and exhausted medical supplies. The wounded lay untended in caves without morphine. Tokyo dispatched a final message on July 5. Whether we attack or whether we stay where we are, there's only death. However, in death, there's life. We must utilize this opportunity to exalt true Japanese manhood. The directive was clear. Make their deaths count. Sugao convened his officers on the evening of July 6 in a command cave near Makuna village. Though emaciated after 3 weeks of fighting, his uniform remained immaculate, his posture perfectly erect. He outlined the plan. Every able-bodied soldier would participate in a gyokusai, a banzai charge, at dawn. Their objective was to breach American lines or perish in the attempt. Civilians were instructed to seek refuge in the cliffs or follow their soldiers. Colonel Suzuki's journal recorded Sugao's final order. I will advance with those who remain. We will die as Japanese warriors. None of them knew that by sunrise on July 7, Sugao would be gone, his disappearance concealed for nearly 8 decades. But one officer in that cave detected a peculiar detail in the general's final instructions, a detail that would only make sense when the Bangkok bunker was opened in 2023. The banzai charge commenced at 4:45 on July 7, 1944. 4,000 Japanese soldiers, many wounded, some armed only with bamboo spears, surged from the hills towards American positions near Tanapag Harbor. They advanced in waves, screaming, officers brandishing samurai swords, medics hobbling on crutches, even civilians intermingling in the chaos. It was the largest banzai charge of the Pacific War. Americans described it as the most harrowing night of the war. Machine gun fire mowed them down, and artillery transformed ravines into killing zones, yet the sheer volume of bodies overwhelmed some positions. Hand-to-hand combat raged until mid-morning. By its conclusion, over 3,000 Japanese lay dead, and American casualties exceeded 900. Saipan's northern pocket was effectively eliminated. Military protocol dictated that General Sugao should have led the charge, an assumption in every subsequent report. However, he did not. According to the official Japanese account, compiled post-war from survivor testimonies, Sugao committed seppuku, ritual suicide, in his command cave just before dawn. His adjutant, Captain Sakai Oba, allegedly assisted, then incinerated the general's body to prevent its capture and desecration. Oba survived the war and corroborated this narrative in 1945. The cave's location was recorded as Hill 721 near Mukuna. American forces later photographed a charred area within a cave believed to be Sugao's final command post. The story aligned with the samurai narrative. An honorable death, no surrender, the general choosing to die by his own hand rather than face capture. This was what Tokyo expected, what the Americans assumed, and what history recorded. However, Captain Oba's testimony contained an odd detail overlooked by most historians. He claimed to have burned the body at 4:30, a mere 15 minutes before the banzai charge began. Yet, multiple American after-action reports noted hearing Japanese radio transmissions in command-level code until nearly 6 o'clock, long after Sugao was supposedly dead. Signal intelligence officers logged these transmissions as originating from the northern sector. When cross-referenced with known Japanese military radio procedures, the encryption level indicated a general officer. Someone with command authority was transmitting 2 hours after Sugao's alleged death. Another issue arose. The cave identified by Americans as Sugao's final position showed evidence of fire, but no human remains. The official explanation was that the body was entirely consumed. However, forensic analysis in the 1990s of cave fire patterns on Saipan demonstrated that even intense fires rarely obliterated skeletal remains completely. The limestone caves trapped heat, but bone typically survived. Every other general officer who died on Saipan, there were 3, left identifiable remains or personal effects. Sugao left nothing, no bones, no ashes, no personal items, save for a charred flag fragment that could have belonged to anyone. Then there was the timeline. The banzai charge, while chaotic, was structured chaos. Officers had assigned positions, and attack routes were coordinated. Yet, not a single American unit reported seeing or identifying General Sugao among the dead or captured. Given his height, nearly 6 feet, unusually tall for a Japanese officer, and distinctive appearance, he should have been noticeable. The 4th Marine Division intelligence officers specifically searched for high-ranking bodies after the battle. They found colonels, majors, and photographed their insignia as proof, but no general. By July 9, organized resistance on Saipan had ceased, and the island was declared secure. American forces began the grim task of counting bodies and processing prisoners. Out of 30,000 Japanese troops, only 921 were captured alive, most of them Korean laborers or wounded soldiers too injured to commit suicide. Civilians faced their own tragedy. Hundreds leaped from the northern cliffs rather than surrender, a horror captured in photographs that shocked the world. Among the Japanese prisoners, interrogators sought anyone who could confirm Sugao's death. They found soldiers who had seen him on July 6, and others who had heard about the seppuku, but no one claimed to have actually witnessed it. Captain Oba remained the sole source, and he was adamant. He performed the ritual assistance, burned the body, then joined the charge. Except Oba also survived the charge. He hid in Saipan's jungles and continued guerrilla resistance until December 1945, months after Japan surrendered, when he finally emerged. He was hailed as a hero in Japan, the last samurai of Saipan, and his account of Sugao's death became the official record. But if Oba lied, or if he was ordered to lie, where did Sugao go? What transpired in those final hours before dawn on July 7 would remain buried for 79 years, hidden in a jungle villa 4,000 miles from the battlefield where he was supposed to have died. And the radio transmissions after his supposed death were just the first clue that something didn't add up. The U.S. military did not question Sugao's death. Why would they? The battle was won, the general was gone, dead or alive, he was out of the war. The official army report, filed in August 1944, listed him as presumed killed in action, July 7, 1944, Saipan. The Japanese government posthumously promoted him to full general and enshrined him at Yasukuni Shrine, where Japan honors its war dead. His wife, Fumiko, received the news in Tokyo and held a memorial service with an empty urn. The army provided a widow's pension. Case closed. Except it wasn't. In September 1944, 2 months after Saipan fell, Australian coast watchers in New Guinea reported something unusual. A Japanese officer matching Sugao's description, tall, older, with a general's bearing, was spotted in Wewak, Papua New Guinea, boarding a submarine. The report landed on a desk in Brisbane, was noted as unconfirmed, and filed away. Nobody followed up. Saipan was old news. The war had moved on to Peleliu, then Iwo Jima. In November 1945, after Japan surrendered, Allied intelligence teams began interviewing high-ranking Japanese officers as part of war crimes investigations. A colonel named Takashi Hirakushi, who had served on Saipan and survived as a prisoner, mentioned in passing that he had heard rumors, just rumors, that Sugao had escaped to Thailand. When pressed, Hirakushi backtracked, claiming he must have been confused. The interrogation transcript noted, subject appears reluctant to discuss command structure on Saipan. Recommend no further action. No further action was taken. Fumiko Sugao, the general's widow, behaved strangely after the war. She never remarried, which was normal for war widows, but she also never visited Yasukuni Shrine to pay respects at her husband's memorial, never attended anniversary ceremonies, and never spoke to journalists about her husband's heroic death. In 1951, she quietly moved from Tokyo to Kyoto and lived in a modest house despite receiving military pension payments that were unusually generous for a lieutenant general's rank. A nephew later recalled that she seemed to be waiting for something but would never say what. In 1958, she received a package with no return address. Inside was a photograph showing a man in civilian clothes standing in front of a tropical villa. The man's face was turned away from the camera. On the back, someone had written in Japanese, "The garden remembers." Fumiko burned the photograph the same day, according to her housemaid, who only recalled the incident years later when police interviewed her in 2023. Meanwhile, in Thailand, a curious property arrangement was forming. In 1946, a villa was constructed 30 miles outside Bangkok in Nakhon Pathom province. Construction records show it was built quickly, completed in less than 4 months and paid for in cash by a Thai businessman named Samai Rotanakorn. However, Samai's business was rubber export, and his finances should not have supported a compound of that size. The property included the main villa, servant quarters, a garden with imported Japanese maples, and a basement bunker that did not appear on any official blueprints. Samai died in 1952. The property passed to a trust with no named beneficiaries. For the next 71 years, a Thai caretaker maintained the grounds, paid from an account in a Singapore bank. The caretaker, when interviewed in 2023 at age 90, said his grandfather held the job before him, and his great-grandfather before that. It was family tradition. They were told never to enter the basement, never to ask questions, just keep the garden trim and the villa secure. The villa stood empty except for brief visits, perhaps once or twice a year, by a man the caretakers called the Japanese gentleman. He always arrived at night, always stayed less than a week, and never gave a name. The last visit anyone remembered was in 1979. Then nothing. The property sat undisturbed for 44 years while Bangkok expanded around it, until a development company bought the surrounding land in 2022 and commissioned a survey. When the excavator's bucket hit the bunker entrance in June 2023, the mystery finally cracked open. For 3 decades after the war, Saipan remained a closed subject in Japan. Veterans rarely discussed the Pacific campaigns, the shame of defeat, the horrors of the Banzai charges, or the civilian mass suicides. Saipan, in particular, carried a stigma because it demonstrated the homeland's vulnerability. Textbooks barely mentioned it. The official stance was that brave men fought honorably and died for the emperor. End of story. Captain Oba, the officer who claimed to have assisted Sugao's suicide, became a minor celebrity in the 1960s when he published his memoir. The book portrayed Saipan's defenders as samurai warriors, with himself as the loyal retainer who carried out his general's final wishes. It sold well. Nobody challenged his account because everyone who could contradict him was dead, or supposedly dead. In the United States, Saipan faded even faster. The island became a footnote between D-Day in Europe and the later iconic battles like Iwo Jima and Okinawa. Historians focused on MacArthur's return to the Philippines, the atomic bombs, and the occupation of Japan. A general nobody had heard of dying in a cave on an island nobody could locate on a map was not headline material. The few scholars who studied Saipan in detail noticed the inconsistencies in the official account. The missing body, the peculiar radio transmissions, the lack of witnesses. In 1978, a Japanese historian named Takashi Yamamoto published a paper questioning whether Sugao actually died on July 7. He cited the evidence gaps and suggested the possibility of escape. The paper appeared in an academic journal with limited circulation. Yamamoto received threatening letters, and his university declined to renew his contract. The paper was quietly retracted. The issue remained buried until 1995, when the 50th anniversary of the war's end sparked renewed interest in Pacific battles. The History Channel aired a documentary about Saipan. Veterans gave interviews, but the segment on Sugao's death was exactly 90 seconds long and repeated the suicide story without question. By the 2000s, technology was advancing rapidly. Satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, DNA analysis, tools that could potentially solve old mysteries. But Saipan's caves had been tourist attractions since the 1960s. The battlefield was picked over. If there were secrets about Sugao, they weren't hiding on the island anymore. In Thailand, the villa remained invisible. Property records were paper files in a government office that nobody accessed. The land wasn't valuable enough to attract developer attention until Bangkok's explosive growth in the 2010s pushed suburban expansion into formerly rural areas. The caretaker kept the grass cut. The Japanese maples grew gnarled and massive. The bunker stayed sealed. What might have remained hidden forever was forced into the light by simple urban sprawl and a construction crew that dug in the wrong spot. When Thai police opened that bunker, the first thing they noticed was that the air inside was stale, but not musty. Someone had engineered the ventilation to preserve whatever was stored there. The Bangkok Metropolitan Police initially treated it as a possible drug lab. Underground bunkers near the city were sometimes used for smuggling operations. But when the forensic team descended the concrete steps and their flashlights swept the interior, they found something else entirely. The bunker was 12 foot x 20 feet, with reinforced concrete walls, climate-controlled by a dehumidification system still running on backup batteries. Along one wall stood military-grade storage lockers, the kind used by the Imperial Japanese Army. Inside the first locker were dress uniforms, 2 different sizes, perfectly preserved in vacuum-sealed bags. The larger uniform bore insignia and measurements consistent with a lieutenant general. The smaller was a colonel's uniform. The second locker contained maps, not modern maps, but military campaign maps from 1944 to 1945. Detailed topographical charts of Saipan, Tinian, and Guam, coastal defense plans for the Marianas, and something unexpected. Detailed maps of the Thai-Burma border region showing supply routes and safe houses, annotated in Japanese with dates ranging from August 1944 to March 1945. The third locker held the money. $40,000 in US currency, series dates from 1934 to 1941, Japanese military script worth another 200,000 yen at 1940s exchange rates, and 30 gold bars, each stamped with Imperial Army quartermaster marks. But the fourth locker was the breakthrough. It contained a leather satchel with personal documents. A family photo showing a Japanese couple with 2 children, dated 1938, letters addressed to Yashit Sugao from someone signed Fumiko, a pocket watch engraved with a Sugao family crest, and a journal. The journal was 200 pages, written in precise Japanese calligraphy. The first entry was dated July 5, 1944. The last entry was December 17, 1979. Detective Narangawat, the lead investigator, couldn't read Japanese but recognized the dates. He called the Japanese embassy. By that evening, a cultural attaché and a translator were examining the documents. By midnight, they had contacted Tokyo. By dawn, a Ministry of Defense team was boarding a flight to Bangkok. What they found in that journal was explosive. The entries detailed a carefully planned extraction operation. According to the entries, Saipan's defense was always recognized as doomed. In late June 1944, while the battle raged, someone in Tokyo authorized a contingency plan. Evacuate key intelligence officers before the island fell. Sugao's name appeared on the list, not to save him, the code of honor wouldn't permit that, but because he possessed knowledge of Pacific defense networks that couldn't be allowed to fall into American hands through interrogation if he was captured. The extraction plan was simple. On the night of July 6, while preparing for the banzai charge, Sugao would be transported to the eastern coast of Saipan. A submarine, the I-36, according to the journal, would surface at 2 o'clock. Sugao would board with 1 staff officer. Captain Oba would remain behind to witness the supposed suicide and maintain the deception. The banzai charge would proceed as planned, ensuring that Americans would be too occupied to notice a single missing general among thousands dead. The journal's entry for July 7, 1944, described the extraction. Left the cave at 1:30. Oba saluted and promised to preserve the honor of the 43rd. The walk to the coast took 40 minutes through jungle paths. The submarine was waiting. We were below the surface by 3:10. Heard the banzai charge begin as we descended. I have lived as a soldier for 34 years. Tonight I die to my honor to serve the Emperor in different ways. The submarine took Sugao south to the Caroline Islands, then west to the Philippines. By late July, he was in occupied Singapore. The journal entries from August-September 1944 described debriefing sessions with intelligence officers, strategic planning meetings about defending the home islands, and growing despair about Japan's situation. Sugao wasn't hiding, he was working, trying to salvage something from a collapse. Then the entry shifted. October 1944, received orders to relocate to Thailand. The mission has changed. No longer defense, now preservation. November 1944, arrived Bangkok. The government here is nominally independent but cooperative. Arrangements have been made. The journal described Sugao's role in the final months of the war. Coordinating with Thai officials to establish evacuation routes for high-ranking officers if Japan surrendered, setting up safe houses, moving gold and currency reserves out of territories the Allies were retaking. He wasn't alone. The journal mentioned other names. Colonels, majors, intelligence officers, all supposedly dead, all actually operating in Southeast Asia. When Japan surrendered in August 1945, Sugao faced a choice. Return home and face war crimes trials, or disappear permanently. The journal's entry from August 16, 1945, was stark. The Emperor has spoken. The war is over. My war is not. I cannot return. Fumiko will understand. The children are grown. The nation needs men who can work in the shadows now, not the light. For the next 34 years, according to the journal, Sugao lived in Thailand under the protection of a loose network of former officers and sympathetic Thai officials who had benefited from Japanese occupation. He never used his real name in public, never contacted his family directly, though the journal hinted at coded messages sent through intermediaries. He survived on funds hidden during the war and lived quietly, watching post-war Japan rebuild from exile. But the journal raised more questions than it answered, particularly about who else knew about Sugao's survival and why the deception was maintained for decades after the war ended. The Japanese government initially tried to suppress the Bangkok discovery. The Ministry of Defense spokesman issued a statement calling the documents unverified materials of uncertain provenance. But Thai police had already photographed everything. Journalists had the story. Within 48 hours, international media were running headlines about the Saipan general who faked his death. The investigation went into overdrive. The journal and artifacts were transferred to a forensic laboratory in Tokyo for authentication. Meanwhile, historians, veterans groups, and government officials scrambled to verify or debunk the claims. The journal itself underwent extensive analysis. Paper composition testing confirmed the pages were consistent with Japanese military-issue notebooks manufactured between 1940 and 1945. The ink was period-appropriate fountain pen ink, showing oxidation patterns consistent with 80-year-old writing. Handwriting analysis compared the journal entries to verified samples of Sugao's writing from his pre-war military records. Forensic document examiner Dr. Kenji Matsumoto concluded the handwriting characteristics, stroke patterns, pressure points, character formations, matched authenticated signatures and reports with 94% certainty. Either this was written by Sugao or by someone who could perfectly replicate his hand for 200 pages across 35 years. The possibility of forgery seemed remote. Who would create such an elaborate fake? And why hide it in a bunker for decades? The uniform provided another verification point. The jacket's measurements matched Sugao's known physical dimensions from his 1943 medical records. 182 centimeters tall, 76 kilograms build. More significantly, the uniform bore custom tailoring marks from the Ginza district military outfitters that Sugao used in Tokyo. The tailor shop had been bombed in 1945, but company records salvaged by descendants showed an order for Lieutenant General Yashit Sugao in January 1944, matching the uniform specifications exactly. The watch was perhaps the most damning evidence. The Sugao family crest engraved on the back was authentic, verified by Sugao's surviving relatives. But more importantly, the watch had been a gift from the emperor to Sugao in 1940 for distinguished service. Imperial household records confirmed the presentation. Serial numbers on the watch movement matched the manufacturer's logs. This was Sugao's personal property, an item he would never have parted with willingly. Investigators turned to the submarine claim. According to the journal, the I-36 extracted Sugao from Saipan on July 7, 1944. Japanese naval archives confirmed that I-36 was active in the Pacific in mid-1944. The submarine's official log showed it departed Truk Lagoon on July 3 on a special operations mission with orders to proceed to classified location, Mariana Sector. The log entry for July 7 noted: surface operation 2 to 3:20 hours. Mission accomplished. Proceeding to waypoint Charlie. No details about the mission's nature were recorded, unusual for standard patrol logs, but consistent with intelligence operations that were kept vague, even in classified documents. The I-36 returned to Singapore on July 28. The submarine was sunk by American destroyer escort USS England in November 1944, taking its complete records and crew to the bottom. But there was a witness. Former submarine radioman Ichiro Tanaka, now 99 years old and living in Osaka, had served on I-36 in 1944. When tracked down by investigative journalists in July 2023, Tanaka initially refused to comment. After persistent questioning, he finally admitted. We picked up someone important from Saipan. Very important. We were sworn to secrecy. I kept that oath for 79 years. I guess it doesn't matter anymore. When shown a photograph of Sugao, Tanaka confirmed. That was him. He came aboard with a colonel. They stayed in the captain's quarters. Nobody was allowed to speak to them. We surfaced at night near the east coast. They came aboard in a small boat. 2 officers brought them. The officers went back to shore. We submerged and headed south. DNA analysis provided the final piece. Among the personal items in the bunker was a hairbrush with preserved hair samples. Investigators obtained DNA samples from Sugao's grandson, Hiroaki Sugao, who had been told his grandfather died heroically on Saipan and was stunned by the Bangkok discovery. Mitochondrial DNA testing showed a familial match with 99.7% probability. The hair belonged to someone in Sugao's direct maternal lineage. Hiroaki provided another crucial detail. His grandmother, Fumiko, had a safety deposit box that she had maintained until her death in 1982. The family never opened it, honoring her wishes that it remain sealed for 100 years after the war ended, until 2045. With the Bangkok discovery, Hiroaki petitioned a Tokyo court to open the box early. In September 2023, the box was opened under supervision. Inside. Letters from Sugao, postmarked from Thailand between 1946 and 1979, 23 letters total, mailed through intermediaries with no return addresses. The letters didn't directly identify Sugao as the author, but used family references only he would know. In one from 1958, the writer mentioned, "The garden where we planted maples before I left for Manchuria in 1931, the same year Sugao was deployed." The photograph Fumiko had burned in 1958 was referenced. "I sent you a picture of the garden. I hope the maples grow as well there as they did for us." The letters painted a picture of a man in lonely exile. He asked about his children, grandchildren he'd never met. He expressed regret, but also resolve. "I did what I believed necessary for reasons that no longer matter. The nation survived. You survived. That is enough." The last letter, dated November 1979, was brief. "I am old now and tired. The villa will soon be empty. If these letters ever come to light, tell them I died as a Japanese officer, serving until I could serve no more. The manner of death matters less than the manner of life." Cross-referencing with Thai records revealed more. Hospital records from Nakhon Pathom showed a Tanaka Ichiro, a common alias, same name as the submarine radioman, likely coincidence, admitted in December 1979 with heart failure. He died on December 18, 1979. The body was cremated the same day under Buddhist rites arranged by a Thai lawyer who has since died. No Japanese records of the death were ever filed. The timeline matched the journal's final entry, December 17, 1979. The writing in that entry was shaky, less controlled than earlier entries, consistent with someone in declining health. It read, "The garden is beautiful today. The maples are turning. I have lived 35 years longer than I should have. I have served in ways no one will remember. I regret the deception, but not the survival. Japan needed some of us to live in the shadows after the light went out. I hope I did some good. I hope I am forgiven." The evidence was overwhelming, but it left one question unanswered. How many others faked their deaths? And why did the Japanese government wait so long to investigate the rumors that some of these men might still be alive? The evidence was conclusive. Lieutenant General Yashit Sugao did not commit suicide on Saipan on July 7, 1944. He was extracted by submarine as part of a covert intelligence operation authorized by Japanese military command. He lived in exile in Thailand for 35 years, maintaining contact with his wife through coded letters while officially listed as dead. He died of natural causes in December 1979 and was cremated under an assumed name. The official account had been wrong, not through error, but through deliberate deception executed with the knowledge and cooperation of multiple parties. Captain Oba, who claimed to have assisted Sugao's suicide, was following orders to create a cover story. The burned cave, the missing body, the honorable narrative, all carefully staged to satisfy both the samurai code that demanded death before surrender and the intelligence need to preserve Sugao's knowledge and freedom of movement. Why the extraction? Documents uncovered by historians following the Bangkok discovery revealed the reasoning. In June 1944, Japanese intelligence anticipated that Saipan would fall within weeks. They also feared that high-ranking officers captured alive might be interrogated about Operation Shogo, Japan's contingency plan for defending the Philippines and the home islands. Sugao had attended strategy sessions in Tokyo in early 1944 and possessed detailed knowledge of defensive positions, troop deployments, and supply networks. The decision was pragmatic. Better to declare him dead and preserve his usefulness than risk him being captured. A dozen other officers received similar extractions from doomed positions across the Pacific in 1944 to 1945, though Sugao's was the only case with such extensive documentation. Thailand was chosen for his exile because the Thai government, while nominally allied with Japan during the war, had quietly hedged its bets. After Japan's surrender, Thai officials helped shield former Japanese officers in exchange for intelligence about British and French colonial intentions in Southeast Asia. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement that persisted through the 1950s until Cold War politics made such cooperation unnecessary. Sugao's role in Thailand, according to declassified American intelligence reports from the 1960s that took on new significance after 2023, was suspected but never confirmed. CIA analysts noted that a network of former Japanese officers operated in Bangkok in the late 1940s, coordinating with nationalist movements in Indochina and possibly with Chinese factions during the Civil War. A report from 1952 mentioned a senior Japanese advisor connected to Thai military intelligence who matched Sugao's physical description, but the lead was never pursued. The most surprising revelation was that senior Japanese government officials knew or strongly suspected Sugao's survival well before 2023. A classified memo from 1965, released following the Bangkok discovery, showed that Japan's defense agency had received reports of Sugao sightings in Southeast Asia but decided not to investigate for reasons of national interest and family privacy. The memo suggested that acknowledging his survival would force uncomfortable questions about other wartime deceptions and potentially require prosecuting him as a deserter, a scandal the government didn't want. Fumiko Sugao's complicity was now understood. She maintained the fiction of widowhood to protect her husband and preserve his pension benefits. Her refusal to visit his memorial at Yasukuni Shrine made sense. How could she honor a death that never occurred? The generous pension she received was likely hush money, ensuring her cooperation with the official story. The network that sustained Sugao included Thai officials, former Japanese officers, and possibly elements of the post-war Japanese intelligence services who found value in having an experienced officer operating outside official channels in Southeast Asia's turbulent post-colonial period. He was useful in ways he could never have been if he had returned to Japan and faced the post-war reckoning. By the time he died in 1979, Japan had transformed into a pacifist economic powerhouse. The old generals were forgotten. The battles they had lost were ancient history to a new generation. Sugao's survival or death mattered to no one except his family, and they had kept the secret loyally. The Bangkok bunker existed as both safe house and time capsule. Sugao prepared it knowing that eventually the truth would emerge. The careful preservation of documents, the journal entries, the personal effects, these were meant to be found, just not for decades. He wanted the record corrected, but only after everyone who might be hurt or embarrassed by the truth was gone. In that sense, his final deception was leaving the evidence behind. He ensured that history eventually would know what happened, just not in his lifetime. In March 2024, the Japanese government formally amended Saipan battle records to note that Lieutenant General Yashit Sugao's death date and circumstances are disputed by evidence discovered in 2023. His memorial at Yasukuni Shrine remains unchanged. The shrine's administrators ruled that the honor of his service outweighs the manner of his departure. Fumiko Sugao's name was added to the memorial plaque, acknowledging her 37 years of silent loyalty. Hiroaki Sugao, the grandson who never met his grandfather, visited the Bangkok villa in October 2023. He planted a new Japanese maple next to the gnarled trees his grandfather had tended. "I don't know if what he did was right," Hiroaki told reporters. "But I understand why he thought it was necessary. War makes people choose between impossible options." The Thai caretaker, whose family maintained the property for 3 generations without knowing why, was awarded a pension by the Japanese government in recognition of his family's service. The villa is now being converted into a private museum documenting Japanese-Thai relations during and after the war. Captain Oba, who maintained the suicide story until his death in 1992, left no indication in his published memoir or private papers that he had lied. Either he took the secret to his grave, or he had convinced himself so thoroughly of the narrative that it became his truth. The submarine radioman Tanaka gave one final interview before his death in November 2023. Asked if he regretted keeping the secret for 79 years, he said, "We followed orders. That's what soldiers do. But I'm glad the truth came out. General Sugao deserved better than to be remembered for a death that never happened." The Bangkok bunker is sealed now. Its contents preserved in temperature-controlled museum storage. The journal, the uniform, the letters, all catalogued and photographed. The garden still grows. The maples still turn red in winter. And somewhere in the soil of Thailand, the ashes of a general who supposedly died on Saipan rest beneath a stone marked with a name that wasn't his own. Sometimes the truth takes 79 years. Sometimes it hides in a villa 4,000 miles from the battlefield. Sometimes soldiers survive even when history says they died. And sometimes the most honorable thing a man can do is live in the shadows so others can walk in the light.